Because they're feeling drafts coming through their outside walls, or they get by their walls and they feel like there's air coming through them because it's wintertime, it's cold, and they want to get that fixed. I've heard about your product. What can you do for it? And what I would like to start off the conversation with is, you know, that may be a problem. That may be the biggest problem in the house. But first, I like to look at your basement or your crawl space, look at your attic, and then decide what's in your walls, existing in your walls, to find out what might be the best solution for stopping that drafty feeling in the house. I think with houses, like anything, like a car, like anything we have as a consumer, what you think might be the problem isn't always the case. I think ultimately that's why you've called a company like our company out there, is to assess what can you do to solve what I think are my problems. And it's not always, if you've got problems in your house, we want to make sure we give you the right solution. And it may cost you actually considerably less, because we're not just going to approach it based on what the customer feels, you know, I need done to get my house more comfortable. If you have fiberglass in your exterior wall, that's working at about, say, 50% efficiency. It's letting air pass through it. Sure, it's not the best insulation in the world, but it's doing something for you in the walls. But if your rim joist or your crawl space or your basement has no insulation from the floor deck below, you have a lot of cold air entering that space in the wintertime, causing a lot of cold conducting through the floors. You know, you get a lot of air passing through those areas if you have gaps in your outside framing. And if your attic is missing considerable amounts of insulation, say you've got blown in or a blanket insulation up there and it's 6 inches thick. If it's only 6 inches, you've got about a third of what code requires, which is an R49. If we can go up in your attic and get you to code, even with conventional blown-in cellulose insulation, to get you to a minimum R49 and can take care of your crawl space or your rim joist, you may not need to do anything with your walls, at least at the initial step. You might say, listen, let me try these two areas first, because they're missing insulation much more than my walls are missing insulation. Then maybe the next season you say, you know what, I like what I saw with the first 2 steps, but let's finally put that foam in the wall. You know, you're the customer. We're going to, you know, if you simply say, I want my walls insulated, I know it's going to be the solution for me. We'll assess what we can do for your house, make sure actually the work can be done. Foam's always going to help the situation. It's just how much impact, energy savings, or comfort are you going to receive versus what you spend. We want you to be informed before you decide A or B is the best approach to take. Fiberglass is a man-made, you know, manufactured product. It's what it is. What it is. It's fiberglass. I mean, spun through a blanket, or it's loosely put together so you can blow it into an attic machine, into an attic blowing machine, and blow it in loose. Both of those systems, remember, who makes it is a manufactured process. Cellulose is recycled newspapers or recycled print media that they've ground up, treated with boric acid for flame retardant and a little bit of insect control. And basically that product is recycled newspapers, is what we're using for insulation with cellulose. If I talk to a customer who doesn't have any clue what foam would cost versus what fiberglass would cost, they might not know what even fiberglass costs them. But they can go to the hardware store and get prices on a roll of insulation, how far that'll go, and figure that out relatively quickly. Most customers are taken aback the fact that it costs, you know, twice as much, you know, usually at least twice as much as what a conventional insulation will cost them. What it takes, though, is some time with the customer to explain to them what are the real true benefits you're gaining by that higher investment on the install. Strictly, what I attribute this to is that you've got a more expensive material. You know, it costs money, a lot of money, to buy this material. It takes specialized equipment to install it, so there's definitely equipment and labor involved in this application. But at the end of the day, you're paying for a higher performance product. You know, you're going to go. People have no trouble knowing they want to put a 95% efficient furnace in versus 80% efficiency furnace. I'm going to put in a 95% efficient insulation system versus what I would call a 30% efficient insulation system if you go conventional. I think that there's that kind of a difference in the performance of a house when it comes to a fiberglass house versus a spray foam house. Now, deck. You know, walls need to have 3.5 inches minimum. Roof decks need 5.5 inches on the minimum side. Okay. 5.5 to 6 inches of open cell foam, you're going to be at 97% performance of that foam, which means it's 90% to the level, it's performing to a level of 97% of its maximum level. If you go to 10 inches, you'll spend probably 25–30% more for the job, but you're only going to gain a little over 2.5% more performance, because you're now just over 99% performance. Is that 30% really worth that little bit of gain? We tend to say it's wiser to spend that money at the best price point, which is the 6-inch thickness, It's optimum. It's what the manufacturer recommends. It's a little over what the manufacturer recommends, knowing the optimum thicknesses. And it's going to comply with building codes and the requirements of the house. I can guarantee you that 100% of the time we stand by our installation. At the end of the day, if my installer follows the procedures, that foam is going to be made properly. It'll be in good performance. Like I said earlier, what it comes down to is, can I guarantee you get 100% of your wall filled up? That part we tend to say, I cannot guarantee 100%, but I'm going to tell you what, with quite high certainty, you're going to get 90-95% of that wall filled up with foam with our crews. So if you take it apart, you find, hey, this wall was great, but there was a corner or a stud cavity got missed. We give a lifetime warranty for labor and covering our installation. If you find that it's missed, you give us a call in a reasonable amount of time. We're back out there. We put spray foam in that space, and if you want the whole thing spray foamed, we'll do that for you too, which I would recommend to anybody. If you're going to take a wall apart, that's the time you need to spray foam it. Because I can do 100% installation, I can see the stud cavity. Spray foam is always a better solution than injection foam. Can shrink, but it comes down to the same things I told you about injection foam. If spray foam is installed improperly with the wrong temperatures, wrong pressures, there's a little bit more knowledge required even for spray foam, because you're dealing with some pretty high-tech equipment to get the installation done. You need to know your pressures, your temperatures, and make sure the product is performing when it hits the wall the way it should. But properly trained, properly installed spray foam will not shrink. Unless the substrates are too cold, substrates are dirty, something's causing that foam not to react properly on the wall. But those things a professional installer is going to take into account and verify before he starts putting it on the wall.